Guys, Kevin Ryan for 11/22/63, episode 4, The Eyes of Texas, and I was really looking forward to this episode. You guys know I've really been enjoying this show, and especially after the cliffhanger we left on last week, I was definitely really looking forward to this episode. I mean, we didn't leave on a huge cliffhanger, not as big as episode 2, but still, I was really looking forward to this one. And I definitely will say, out of the 4 episodes, this one was the weakest. I will definitely say that. This was still a really great episode. I still really loved it. But I will admit there were some things that were kind of slow, and there were some things that didn't really go anywhere. But let's just get into this episode, because overall, I really did enjoy it. What I do like about this episode is that this is really the episode where things just start to get complicated for Jake. I mean, things have been going so well for him. He's been able to tell all these lies, and people don't even think that they're lies, and, he's had to make up all these things, and obviously, it's not his fault. This is just who he had to be, in this world, because he couldn't be himself, but you can tell in this episode, things are definitely getting complicated, and I can't wait to see what happens, in the next 4 episodes, because we're halfway through the show after this, which is awesome. You definitely feel that in this episode, but let's just get into it. We start off with Oswald. He's timing how fast he can assemble a rifle, and Satisfied looks in a mirror and then begins again. The baby cries, and Oswald calls to Marina to take care of her, but gets no answer. He finally goes and checks on his daughter himself, and it's a really good scene. It shows, how quick he is with checking guns, things like that, and I gotta say, the actor that's playing him really is showing this intimidating side of Oswald, but he's also showing that he is a family man. He does really care about Marina. He does really care about his mother, and I like seeing that. He's not completely merciless. I like that they did that. So later, George is in the yard talking to Marina as she hangs clothing to dry. Oswald comes down holding his rifle and has Marina take a photo of him. He figures that people will want to know that he stands for something, and George wonders what Oswald's going to do with the rifle, and Oswald says that he's going to hunt fascists, and obviously, I don't know too much about the whole fascist situation. I kind of do. Actually, yeah, I talked about it in history, so I should know, but, I can't really think about it right now. But that definitely is pointing out that Oswald does have a thing for hunting fascists. So Jake watched from his new apartment, compares Oswald's pose to the famous photo that is left over from the burned files, and he then tells Bill to watch the Oswalds and George closely, and reminds his partner to make sure the Oswalds don't learn who they are, because obviously it's just going to make things much more complicated. If they don't learn who they are, then they'll be able to get the information faster, they won't worry that they're after them, things like that. And once Jake leaves, Bill watches Marina as she continues hanging up clothes. She looks over, sees Bill, hesitantly waves to him. Bill waves back, and Marina goes inside. This was the thing that just didn't really work for me in this episode. This kind of felt not out of character for Bill, but it just felt like they did this to add something for Bill to do, really, rather than be just Jake's sidekick, which I understand. But having this whole thing with Bill liking Marina, it just didn't really work for me. I don't know. Something about that was really the thing that didn't work for me in this episode. So, other than that, I really liked it, but that really did not work. So at the high school in Jody, Sadie's playing the piano when Jake comes in. They kiss, and Jake assures her that everyone is gone, and you can tell that these two are definitely getting closer. I really love these two. I mean, these two just have really great chemistry, honestly. That's really the thing. They have great chemistry. They work so well together, and he plays a Beatles song from Sadie's future and claims that he made it up himself, which I thought was really clever the way he did that, and Sadie says that he's odd. Jake says he's just crazy, and they kiss again. Deke comes in, calls to get their attention, asks to talk to Jake privately, and out in the hallway, the principal reminds Jake that he's supposed to set an example and warns that all the students are judging whether Jake is good or bad, because obviously there's a certain reputation that he's giving off, and Deke explains that Sadie is a new kind of woman and tells Jake to put her first and protect what's important in life, and he gives Jake a card for some private bungalows and tells him to be discreet. Jake goes to his car unaware that someone is watching him. Now, we don't know who's watching, but someone is definitely watching him, and we'll get into that. So later, Jake returns to the apartment. Bill plays back recordings of Oswald talking in English against Walker, and basically, Oswald tells George that he's going to do something that can't be ignored, and George says that he has some friends who can help him, and Jake figures that George told Oswald to assassinate Walker and is Lee's CIA handler, and that Walker is a test run for Kennedy. So pretty much this is pretty much what Jake was thinking that Oswald might not necessarily done this on his own. This might have been George telling him to do this, and that changed a lot of things. So Bill remembers Jake saying that Oswald fails to kill Walker in the original timeline, and Jake said he doesn't know why the CIA would use a shooter who failed, because that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, if Oswald were to fail, then there'd be no reason for the CIA to use him. He'd be no use to them. I mean, definitely that's a good claim. So when Bill wonders what they do, Jake figures that they have to follow both men, and he'll cover George while Bill takes Oswald, which was a very smart idea, because obviously these are two men that have very different ideas, and where they're trying to figure out really what's going on, because there's clearly something that they're not getting, and they don't know what it is. So, and as they argue, someone knocks at the door, and it's Mina, who asks Jake how long he thought that he'd get away with it, and she knows Jake's real last name and asks Bill to give them some privacy. And you guys know I really liked her character. I really liked the way that the scene was done. I really think they handled it very well. I overall really did enjoy this scene. I like the way that they did this scene overall. Definitely, I enjoyed it for the most part. But I will admit that a big part of this scene, it really didn't go anywhere after this scene. After this scene, nothing really happened to the plot. Kind of just went away after this, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, because it doesn't really change much, but it is a pretty big deal what this scene does do. And it was a very effective scene. Just like I said, I felt like a lot of it wasn't as effective as it could have been. Because basically, obviously, he's freaking out. I mean, knowing that Mina is onto him, he doesn't know what to do. Mina explains that they never received Jake's immunization records, and his paper trail was non-existent. Jake used the name Epping in Kentucky, and Mina says that she came to Jake before Deke and asked Jake if they would break their trust. Jake says that he wouldn't. Jake claims that he went to witness protection in 1959 and took the name Amberson, and he describes a scene from The Godfather. Now, he and Bill keep the Texas apartment as a backup, and I thought that was clever the way he did that. That's just something I love that the show does, is how Jake kind of tells stories through movies or things that he knows. It's a very clever way of him making up stories. I mean, yeah, it would make sense. Obviously, movies are out there. It would make sense for him to just come up with things. I thought that was really cool the way we saw that. Mimi, that's her name, not Mina. Mimi is her name. That's what I was saying, not Mina. But basically, I like the way that this was done. Like I said, basically there's this scene from The Godfather, and I thought this was really, basically he and Bill keep the Texas apartment as a backup, and Mimi warns that it would devastate the Jody community if Jake was exposed as an imposter, and says that she won't say anything about it. And as she goes, Mimi says that it's wrong to conceal things from people he cares about, and she's on to him. She is. But the interesting thing about the scene is that it's not what he thinks. He thought it was everything, but really she just knows that, he came up with this lie, and he knows it's a lie. So you can definitely tell that things aren't going perfect for him. It's starting to, it's working, but it's not going perfect. And I like the way this scene was done, definitely. Problem is, this isn't discussed again after this scene. This was the only time this was discussed in this episode. And I'm sure we're going to hear about it again, but as far as this episode goes, this is the only time we hear about it. So later at the high school, Jake leaves an envelope for Sadie with a poem and the bungalow address. There's a note at the bottom saying that he needs to tell her something, and I'm like, oh shit, he's going to tell her everything, I thought. That's what I was thinking, that he was going to tell her who he is and everything, because he trusts her, that's the thing. And again, he's doing the opposite of what Al told him, which something I thought was very well done in this episode. There's not a single thing with Al in this episode. We don't see Al talking to Jake, and I think it's starting to show that Jake is not really going by what Al told him to do. He's kind of playing by his own rules, and I thought they did a good job with showing that in this episode. We see that night, Sadie drives to the bungalow, finds a record player, candles lit on the tables. Jake steps out, invites Sadie to dance. She accepts, and Jake says that he doesn't want to move too fast. He wonders if being with him is costing her something, and figured that they could find one moment to be their real selves. Jake hesitates, worries that it's going to be too much for Sadie, and Sadie starts to undress, and then they kiss, and they have sex, which I thought was interesting, but outside, someone's watching from the bushes. We don't know who's watching them, but someone's watching. So Bill approaches Marina, offers her a doll that she dropped earlier. He introduced himself. Marina thanks him for his help. They smell each other, and Bill goes back inside. Now, I understand that Jake said that he shouldn't get attached. I understand that, but again, I'm not a fan of this. I understand that Bill isn't necessarily going to listen to Jake and is going to do his own thing because that's just who he is, and he really likes Marina. But it's clear that this is complicating things, and I like the way this is going, but at the same time, I really feel it's unnecessary. We don't need this subplot with Marina and Bill. It just doesn't seem like it's necessary to me. So next day, Jake wakes up, finds Sadie looking at him. She wonders why he doesn't tell stories about his life and wonders if he has something to hide because he doesn't really tell her anything. He kind of just talks about some things here and there, but he doesn't really tell her any stories, which obviously he should tell her, and he's not telling her, and obviously that's something that she wants to know. And he wonders if he can be, and admits that he feels like an imposter in his own life, and Jake tells Sadie that he wants to start things over with her. He braces himself, warns that what he's going to say will sound crazy, and he's basically gonna tell her, like, he was about to tell her in this scene everything that he was, but before he can, and that's something I like about Jake, is that when he when he thinks the time is right, he will tell someone everything and he doesn't care what happens. He trusts Sadie and he doesn't want to upset her. He wants to tell her what's going on. So before he can start, Jake sees an envelope next to the outside door that wasn't there when they got there. It has photos of Jake and Sadie kissing, and Jake claims it's a hotel bill. He quickly excuses himself, says that they have to go, and obviously he's freaking out because he has no idea who took these pictures. And later at the apartment, Jake warns Bill the CIA took the photos, sent them to warn him to back off. He figures that they're threatening to ruin Sadie as well, and Bill suggests that Jake break up with Sadie, and that's the best thing to do, and Jake tells him to leave Sadie out of it, and says that they will have to clean up everything with Oswald and George. He figures that if Oswald isn't alone, so shooting him wouldn't stop Kenny's assassination, and wants to get just a little closer, because he wants to know more what's going on. So, George then takes Oswald to an old hotel, gives the password to get in. Jake and Bill follow them, and Jake figures it's the meet where George introduces Oswald to his powerful friends. They buzz the door, and Jake gives the password he overheard. Bill reluctantly goes in with Jake. Jake and Bill enter what turns out to be a brothel, and they spot Oswald and George with a prostitute, and Bill is furious that Oswald is cheating on Marina, and a woman, Juanita Dale, comes over to make them at home, and Jake is fake names as George and Oswald go upstairs with two prostitutes, and seeing them go, Jake picks a prostitute at random, Dawn, and says that she'll do. He says that Bill is broke and will wait in the lounge and goes upstairs with Dawn. So once they're upstairs, Dawn quotes Jake her rates, and she's just thinking that he's gonna have sex with her because she's a prostitute, obviously. But that's not what he's there to do. Jake spots Oswald and George in a room, says that he doesn't need her. Dawn assumes that he's a voyeur and starts to struggle, breaks her high heel. She starts attacking Jake, and Oswald slams the door shut. The police come in and capture Jake as he tries to run, and basically, that's what happens there, that they try to capture him, and Jake really gets it very close in this episode, just like the last episode, very close. The next day, Zeke bails out Jake and Bill, and Jake figures that George uses contacts to avoid arrest. He doesn't want to hear Jake's explanation, and Jake asks him to keep it between them. Deke drives him back to Jody and reminds Jake that he has a class in 30 minutes, and he refused to let Jake even change his shirt as an object lesson, which very interesting that he didn't even let him change his shirt. So they go to the high school. Everyone stares at Jake, obviously, because of the shirt he's wearing. And Deke notices that, I can't remember her name. I keep forgetting. Mimi, coughing as he calls her into his office. Jake sees him through the window, says hello to Mimi, who advised him to review the teacher's dress code because he didn't. Kind of a funny scene there. I like the way that was done, and I like the way the show tries to incorporate humor. It's a dark show at points, but they do try to incorporate humor, and I think they did it pretty well here. So as Jake gets some coffee, he sees Sadie in a classroom talking to her ex-husband Johnny, and Mimi identifies Johnny for Jake, says that what Johnny is doing there is none of Jake's business, and Johnny tries to kiss Sadie, but she turns away and he walks out. And we start to find out more of what's going on between Johnny and Sadie, and I gotta say, I really think they handle this really well. Jake calls to Sadie, she goes, but she ignores him. He goes after her. Sadie says that Johnny found out where she was from her mother, and won't give Sadie a divorce because of that. Because if you remember from where she lives, that's not something that's common in that state, so in Dallas. So Jake assures her that she can trust him with anything. Sadie finally says that she and Johnny never had sex before their wedding night, and when they did, she discovered that he had a clothespin on his genital, and he had sex with her, and then said that she was dirty. And Sadie blames herself for ruining a relation with Jake. Jake assures her that she didn't ruin anything. However, she doesn't believe him and drives off. And the whole clothespin, I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I don't really get either. I know there's some sort of hidden meaning there with him having a clothespin in hers and him saying that she was dirty. I think it's that maybe he thought that she was cheating on him or something. I don't really know. It's very interesting. A lot of people are talking about that. I don't really know what the context of that really is, but I do find that very interesting. So, of course, she doesn't believe him. She drives off, and later Bill comes to school, tells Jake that between classes that George came by the house. He told Oswald that he has two friends he has to meet, but Oswald says that he had something to do. They go back to Dallas, and Jake follows George while Bill follows Oswald. And a woman pulls in front of Jake, and by the time she turns off, George is parked. Jake drives around the lot of what he figures is a CIA front and spots George, and obviously wants to go after him because, he knows his agenda. So Marina then returns home. Lee gives her, and Oswald gives her a photo of the two of them and Juanita. And as Bill listens in with the surveillance equipment, Oswald tells Marina that he wants her to have the photo in case something happens to him. He refused to explain that it will be a good thing. They end up having sex, and Bill, disgusted, finally throws the headphones away. And I like the way this was done, but again, I'm just not a fan of this whole Bill getting close to Marina. I really think it just complicates things. And I know that's the point, but I don't know. I'm just not really a fan of that. So Jake watches as George meets two men on the building's loading dock. He gets close enough to listen as the men complain that Oswald isn't there for whatever reason, because obviously he's having sex with Marina. And George warns that Oswald's hard to handle, just as a dog barks at Jake. Jake tries to shut it, but the three men go inside, and Johnny is there to introduce himself to Jake, says that he followed him to make sure he got his message, the photos, and Jake swears him and tells Johnny that if he ever talks to Sadie again, then he'll beat him up and leave him in a ditch, and Johnny warns that Sadie is his property, very interesting, and Jake asks about his clothespin. He warns the people talking in a small town, threatens to tell them Johnny's secret, and Johnny says that Sadie shouldn't have told him about it, that it was just something that he shouldn't have known, and remember, Mimi said that this is not something he should have known, and Jake tells him to give Sadie the divorce and disappear, and yeah, I mean, that's what Johnny should do, but it's clear that Johnny doesn't want to do that. Recovering his composure, Johnny says that Jake and Sadie deserve each other, and he just drives away, knowing that he probably can't beat Jake. It's an interesting situation, because you see that Johnny, he still really, I think, does, there's something going on between him and Sadie. We don't really know what's going on there. It's a very toxic relationship, you can tell, but it does seem like he understands why him and Sadie are together. So it's a very interesting situation. I don't really know where they're going with the character of Johnny, but I'm interested, definitely, I gotta say that. Again, I don't fully understand the whole clothespin thing. I feel like there's a much deeper metaphor, of which I just can't really think of right now. That's really my thing. Like, I know that there's something going on with that clothespin, and there's some sort of context. It's just right now, I can't really think of what that's all about. So, basically, we then see back in Jody, Jake takes flowers to Sadie at her home, assures her that he's there because he loves her. Surprised and touched, Sadie kisses him, and they hug. It's a really nice scene. It's a nice scene because you see that they deserve each other. But at the same time, I do feel like Jake feels guilt for Johnny, who he knows they're not divorced yet. And obviously, Jake feels bad about that because, he's with someone that's not divorced, and he understands Johnny's position. So that night, Jake goes back to the apartment in Dallas. Bill's listening to Oswald and Marina argue. Bill says he's done with this entire thing, and Lee starts hitting Marina, and Bill prepares to go up and stop him, and Jake stops Bill, warning that they can't interfere in the Oswald's lives. He insists that Marina lives, and the fighting dies down. Furious, Bill tells Jake that he's an asshole, goes outside, and again, this really seemed like this was just there to create drama between Bill and Jake, but I think this was well handled, I gotta say. Marina's sitting on the stairs, offers her a cigarette. She accepts, and Bill lights it. He brushes the hair out of her face, sees the bruises, lets Marina put her head on his shoulder as she cries, and you can see that, again, her and Oswald are just a very toxic relationship. And I do like that Bill kind of wants this in his life, because if you remember, he didn't really have much of a life. So I like that he's trying to make a life for himself. I think that's well done, the way they're handling that. I just don't really like the way they've gotten these two together, but I don't really know if this is going to be a romance or what's going to happen there. I kind of want it to be something more where Bill, has a crush on her, but she doesn't think of him that way. It's kind of what I want it to be, because I think it's sweet. Like, their overall friendship relation, whatever you want to call it, I like their scenes great. I think they work well together, but I just don't want them in a relationship. I think it really just has unnecessary drama, and it's really not needed. So, the next day at the high school, Deke irritably tells Jake that Mimi's homesick, and Sadie discovers that Johnny has sent her the divorce paper, along with a note warning that Jake isn't who he says he is, and it's clear that Johnny knows something, and Jake suggests they celebrate, and she says that she'll see him later. obviously questioning what that note's about, but she doesn't call him out on it, probably because she wants him to come forward, and I can understand that. If you remember before, he said he never lied to her. He said that he told her the truth and everything, and that there's nothing more going on, but he was gonna tell her what was going on. He was gonna tell her everything. He just didn't get that chance to. He's gonna have to tell her very soon. You can tell that definitely she's going to find out either whether he tells her or not. She definitely is gonna find out something. So Jake returns to Dallas that night, sees Bill watching the TV, one of the gamers that he bet on using Al's notes. The teacher goes in, apologizes for stopping Bill from helping Marina. Bill says that they're a team, and Jake agrees. He tells Jake that he has some plans for the winnings, and Jake leaves, and I thought that scene was really well done. Sadie goes to Jake's house with the casserole, hears music playing inside. She figures that it's Jake and calls him, but gets no answer. There's no one there. Johnny is in the house hiding in the shadows, ducks in the basement, and hearing something, Sadie goes downstairs, finds a tape player on a workbench. She turns it on and hears Oswald and Marina making love, knowing there's something going on that Jake is not telling her about. Jake then enters his house, hears the voice, he goes downstairs, and Sadie right out just says, "Who are you?" And that's how the episode ends. So overall, really great episode. I really did enjoy this episode. But like I said, there were just a few things that didn't really go anywhere. Like the whole thing with Mina and Jake. I get that that relationship is different, but it really didn't do anything. Like, it just felt like that was there to create some sort of, way to keep Mimi in the show. I like the bonding between Mimi and Jake overall. Just that scene didn't really do much for me after, and I wanted to do more. Like, I really wanted more from that. I'm very interested in seeing what's going on with Johnny, though, because it's clear that Johnny knows what Jake is hiding. The question is, how does he know what he's hiding, and what does Johnny think he's hiding? Because it's clear that Johnny is not, does not trust Jake, and we don't really know what that's all about. We'll have to see what's going on. It's going to be very interesting. But Jake's going to tell Sadie. I mean, we know he was going to tell her, but he's just got to wait for the right moment. And I feel like when he gets that moment, he's going to tell Sadie everything, which could either end up really good or really bad for the two of them, because there's a part of me that feels like if Jake told her, she'd understand. And then there's a part of me that feels like it's not a good thing if he tells her, like maybe it's not the best thing to do. But I feel like Jake is still going to tell her because he just feels it's the right thing for him to do, and we'll have to see what's going on there. Oswald. Bill is definitely making things complicated for Jake, because obviously he's hanging out with Marina, he clearly has a crush on her, and I don't know if she likes him. Again, I don't want this to be something where Marina likes him. I want it to be something where he likes her and she doesn't. I think it just works better that way. But Bill is definitely going to complicate things, and I understand that those two have very different viewpoints, and I like the way they're handling it. I like that it wasn't a whole thing. Like, they did have a fallout, but they did apologize because, we got to keep that dynamic going, and I like the way they did that. Definitely really good stuff there. But Jake's got to come clean. Jake's got to come clean. He can't keep this lie going on. He's got to come clean to Sadie, and I feel like he's ready to. He was going to tell her everything that was going on. The problem is he's going against literally everything that Alice told him to do. He is getting close to people. He is kind of making a life in this world, and I don't really see him going back to the present. I don't really see him doing that because, one, that would undo everything, obviously, and he has to stay there. I feel like Jake doesn't have a problem with that. Like, he's going to stay in the 60s because this is really where his home is. He feels home here, and I like seeing that. I think they're handling that really, really well overall. But overall, guys, I'm gonna you guys saw this episode. I really did enjoy this episode overall. Definitely, like I said, my least favorite of the four. I think of the four, this one definitely was my least favorite, but still a really great episode. I definitely like the way this episode was done. Let me know what you guys saw of it, and I will see you guys next year, which will be for the season premiere of Bates Motel, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.